Thanks, Chairman. My comments today about FBI chiefs testifying honestly and not lying to Congress are particularly relevant in light of your opening statement. Let me start with the basic fact behind all of this, that the current FBI director pled the fifth in the matter where he ended up providing grand jury testimony. We've never had an FBI director come through this committee who had pled the fifth before. As you know, when you plead the fifth, to do it honestly, you have to have a good faith belief that your testimony would subject you to criminal liability, which meant if Patel was being honest, he had a good faith belief that his testimony would subject him to criminal liability. As that went forward, he ended up getting immunity from the government in order to testify. If this were a court, a civil court, a judge would allow an adverse inference to be drawn against the witness who had asserted the fifth. In Patel's proceedings, we were never even allowed to get to the bottom of the grand jury testimony. Why he pled the fifth, what he said, all of that was papered over as he went through this committee to confirmation. So for obvious reasons, I pursued that question, just as you would, Chairman, if the shoe were on the other foot. And I believe that Patel lied to us in the committee. He said that he couldn't share his grand jury testimony, and I'm quoting him here, because there's a court order on that case. He said, he said again, I can't go into court orders granted by the DC District Chief Judge. And then when I pressed him further, he challenged me saying, you want me to violate a court order? He then went on to say to Senator Booker that his grand jury testimony has been sealed by the Department of Justice and I'm not allowed to discuss it here. Well, as it turns out, none of that was true. All of that was false. And we know that because the DC District Chief Judge, who he mentioned in his false statement to this committee, said, and I'm quoting the judge, July 2025, Federal Rule of Criminal Procedure 6E allows witnesses like Patel to divulge the contents of their testimony, meaning that nothing was preventing him from doing so before the committee, unquote. So it sure looks like he lied about that. So in his recent testimony, I asked him again. And now he offered the committee a new and different lie, which is that he had released the transcript already. He said, first of all, I'd love my grand jury testimony to be released. I want it made public. And then he said, I wanted the transcript released and I will get it to you, sir, to me. I wanted the transcript released and I will get you the transcript. He said to me, we can confirm that pursuant to my action, that grand jury testimony has been released. The transcript. He said the transcript has been released publicly. He told Senator Booker, well, I don't have the grand jury transcript. That's why I released it. So, as it turns out, no transcript was released. He was making up that lie, probably to get away from having to answer our questions. But now we have an FBI director who first lied in committee about a non-existent court order and had that lie exploded by the actual judge who he claimed had him under court order, and then lied in committee about having released a transcript that we all know has not been released. I think on that state of facts, we're entitled to get the transcript that he says he wants us to have, that he says he released publicly, and that the judge has confirmed is not under any court order of protection. So, Mr. Chairman, I look forward to working with you. I know you have a strong interest in FBI chiefs testifying honestly in this committee and not lying to Congress, to try to get to the bottom of what is going on, because those seem like two pretty flagrant and obviously provable lies. And we'll follow up for further assistance to get to the bottom of this. But I don't think it's asking too much to ask the committee's support, to ask Director Patel to do what he says he has already done, which is to release the grand jury transcript of his testimony and provide it to us. Thank you.
Why was the pause? You know, I wasn't there. Wasn't it explained to you when you arrived? Oh, by the way, boss, there was an 8-day pause on background investigations. Don't you think that's something someone would tell you at some point? Again, I leave background investigations to the men and women in the division responsible for them. I do not interfere. I understand that. What I don't understand is whether you were told about the pause and why you wouldn't be told about the pause. I don't recall that, sir. All right. The allegation also relates to whether senior staff employee reviews included questions about whether they voted for Kamala Harris in the 2024 election. Since when is who you voted for a proper question for agents to be asked? I don't know what Senator Sheldon Whitehouse asked why FBI background checks for Trump nominees were paused. Kash Patel said he didn't know. When the FBI director doesn't know who hit pause, accountability is already broken. Why was the pause? Do you know? I wasn't there. Wasn't it explained to you when you got there? Oh, by the way, boss, there was an 8-day pause on background investigations. You think that would be something that would be explained to you at some point? Again, I leave it to the career professionals running those investigations. I do not interfere. I get that. What I don't get is whether you were told about the pause and why you wouldn't be told about it. I don't recall that, sir. All right. The allegation also relates to whether employee reviews of senior staff included whether they voted for Kamala Harris in the 2024 election. Since when is who you voted for a proper question for agents to be asked? I don't know what allegation you're referring to. The FBI conducts background investigations. In the case of U.S. Attorney Jeanine Pirro, it has come to light in a civil proceeding that Fox News executives, prior to her confirmation, called her, quote, a reckless maniac who makes insane comments, said, I don't trust her to be responsible, and noted her penchant for what they called random conspiracy theories on weird internet sites. My question to you is, did that turn up in her background investigation? For any background investigation, Senator, we do not discuss those publicly. And for every background investigation, when there's an adjudication, it is not made by me. It is made by career professionals who run the inspection and background check system. Do you know whether that information was found? We're an oversight body here, and there are really 3 possibilities. 1. The FBI background investigation didn't find it, which would be worth noting, because full field investigations are supposed to find it. 2. The FBI found it and did not report it to the administration or the committee. 3. You found it, you reported it to the administration, and they proceeded with the nomination anyway, knowing she had been described as a reckless maniac who makes insane comments, isn't trusted to be responsible, and has a penchant for random conspiracy theories on weird internet sites. Are you saying this committee has no authority or reason to determine which of those is true? This committee can look into anything it wishes. I'm telling you, the background investigations are conducted by career individuals. They do not report the details to me. They adjudicate them independently and individually. That's how it's always been done. What happened during the pause in FBI background investigations that was alleged in the complaint against you and the FBI by terminated FBI agents. On February 12th, Emil Bove directed the FBI, quote, to pause any FBI background investigations of Trump nominees until Patel was confirmed, which happened on February 20th. That is the general description of what they alleged. Why were background investigations paused? Was it so material like this could be scrubbed out? And have they resumed fully and normally after your arrival on February 20th? I can speak to the time period since I arrived. Background investigations have been ongoing across the board at the FBI. Why was the pause? Do you know, I was not there. Wasn't it explained to you when you got there? Oh, by the way, boss, there was an 8-day pause on background investigations. You think that would be something that would be explained to you at some point? Again, I leave it to the division responsible for background investigations. I do not interfere with them. I get that. What I don't get is whether you were told about the pause and why you would not be told about that pause. I don't recall that, sir. All right. The allegation also relates to whether internal employee reviews for promotion, termination, and other job actions included questions about who agents voted for. To be clear, I'm not talking about full-field background investigations. I'm talking about internal reviews. Is it now the policy of the FBI to ask agents who they voted for? And since when is who agents voted for a proper question for the FBI to ask? Taking those in reverse order, it's not a proper question. And it's improper to allege that I'm doing that. Under my leadership, the FBI does not ask who you voted for. And one correction, for the record. Senator, it's the Security Division that runs background investigations, not HRD. Okay, I'll accept that correction. And if we cannot locate your grand jury transcript, expect a question for the record that gives you the chance to provide it again if it was previously provided or to make whatever statement. Rule 6E allows you to make, truthfully, to the best of your recollection, about what you told the grand jury. Do you understand that? That's why I wanted the transcript released. We'll get it to you, sir. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chairman. What made this exchange unsettling wasn't raised voices or partisan theatrics. It was the quiet, almost bureaucratic way something profoundly serious slipped into view. When Senator Sheldon Whitehouse questioned FBI Director Kash Patel about a reported pause in FBI background investigations of Trump nominees, the answers didn't clarify anything. They exposed a vacuum where accountability should live. To understand why this matters, you have to understand what FBI background investigations actually are. These aren't routine checklists. They're the federal government's first line of defense against corruption, coercion, and national security risk. They're designed to answer a basic question before someone gains power. Can the country trust you with it? Any pause in that process, especially one involving political appointees, isn't a technical hiccup. It's a red flag. Whitehouse zeroed in on the timing. According to whistleblower allegations, background investigations were paused shortly before Patel's confirmation and resumed afterward. Patel's response was consistent but revealing. He wasn't there. He doesn't interfere. Career officials handle it. What he did not say mattered just as much. He did not explain why the pause happened. He did not say who ordered it. And he did not explain why an incoming FBI director would not be briefed on something so extraordinary. In any normal institution, an unexplained pause in background checks for senior political figures would trigger alarms. It would demand documentation, internal review, and transparency. Instead, what we saw was selective distance. A leader presented as both responsible for the institution and insulated from one of the most consequential integrity failures alleged within it. Then came the second layer, where concern tipped into alarm. Whitehouse raised allegations that internal employee reviews included questions about who agents voted for in the 2024 election. Patel denied it and said such questions would be improper. That matters, but the deeper issue is that this allegation exists at all because it speaks to the climate inside the Bureau. The FBI's legitimacy rests on neutrality. The moment agents believe their careers hinge on political loyalty instead of professional ethics, the system begins to corrode. Investigations become suspect. Decisions lose credibility. Public trust erodes not because of ideology, but because power appears unaccountable. There is a legitimate debate to be had about past abuses of federal power. But reform does not mean replacing one form of politicization with another. Cleaning up an institution requires transparency, not secrecy. It requires answering hard questions, not deflecting them to unnamed career officials when things get uncomfortable. What Whitehouse was really asking beneath the specifics was simple. Who is watching the watchers? If background checks can be paused without explanation, if the FBI director is not informed or claims not to remember, if allegations of political litmus tests surface and are brushed aside, then oversight itself starts to feel optional. And in a democracy, oversight is not optional. It's the guardrail. This isn't about scoring points. It's about whether federal law enforcement serves the Constitution or the people who temporarily hold power. Institutions don't collapse all at once. They erode slowly through normalized exceptions, unanswered questions, and a culture of "I don't recall." That's why exchanges like this matter, not because they go viral, but because they reveal the fault lines. And it's why viewers shouldn't just watch and move on. Pay attention. Demand follow-up. Support independent oversight. Because the strength of democratic institutions is not measured by how loudly leaders defend them, but by how transparently they are held to account. If accountability matters to you, stay engaged, share responsibly, and keep asking the questions power would rather avoid.